me.
Oh no, yeah, no, it's a little bit more positive of an outcome than the last time for sure.
Yeah, that's okay.
Yeah.
And I know somebody. I talked to a lot of people that have, changed jobs a bit in the last year or so, and it's a common thing to be joining teams that it's not working for some reason. It's kind of, frustrating for people because it ends up being a lot of jumping around. But um, yeah, any thoughts on what maybe more questions to ask in the interview process or anything that might have helped?
I think it's more that like I've learned more about the organization structure and uh, like growth model that I don't want to be a part of, and so I didn't necessarily catch those red flags during the interview process because they hadn't existed for me yet, really. And
Gotcha.
so going into the next time, like keeping an eye on how they've grown to the size they're at now, like what their plan is for the next 5 years, how what they're backed by. Like I typically have more fun and have more success in VC backed companies than I do in private equity backed companies, and so that's something to keep in mind moving forward. So I think it's more about just better understanding my own personal tastes and where I thrive versus saying I've worked in a PE backed company before, but this time might be different. I think now I pretty much know that that's not really the world for me. So um, just that kind of thing.
Yeah, that's smart. It's really helpful. I know in looking at different companies that I've been looking at, there are definitely bigger organizations that I'd love to work for, but you can tell from the outside that they have a level of autonomy and they want to experiment and try new things, but also it's very customer oriented. And for a bigger company, that's the kind I would want to work for. For smaller companies, though, I'm more looking at startups with less than 100 people. There's just so
Yeah.
much more room to wear a lot of hats and be super helpful. And I'm finding that that is a place where I tend to thrive, being able to do that, focus on customers and try a lot of things. And the bigger an organization gets, and I know that it can vary based on the company and leadership and who's invested, but the more red tape there is, the more there's waiting around. When I was at Forbes, it would literally be 3 days that I had to wait to get a post approved for the community. And as a community manager, I was like, there's no way I can stick with this. I need to be able to move without that constant someone to approve every single thing. Um, but it's good to really figure that out. So, congratulations on that. And I hope you find your next role just as quickly as you found this one.
That'd be nice. But I'm definitely going to try to make the absolute right decision next time. I was sort of a victim of being like at the end of my severance package and being like, I have a couple of fine offers in front of me. I'll take one of them and run with it. And that's I don't want to approach it like that this time. But I'm like you. I need to be at a place where I can sort of like I like being sort of like a marketing cowboy and just like being able to do a lot of things at once. Be helpful in a lot of different areas and not be tied down by a bunch of process.
Yeah.
Process is good to a point, but it can be suffocating if you feel like it's sort of stifling your creativity, which is what I was feeling at PNM. So
Yeah, and
yeah,
definitely
that's
with, bigger, customer marketing, especially if you're incorporating advocacy, you have to have a level of being able to test and play around with what works. And if a company is not ready for that and you cannot find a way to overcome that in some ways, like it's very difficult. I mean, not that it's your fault. Some companies are just like, this is the way we're going to be, and this is what we want, and they're looking for something very specific to what is already working for them. But Sorry, just got a DM. Um, yeah, I don't know where I was going with that. I got distracted.
No, but
Sorry.
you're right though. I think it's just like, I don't feel bad. In fact, I feel really good about this conclusion. Frankly, I've been pretty miserable there for the past 2 months, and I was even fighting that feeling, and I think that's something I'm learning also is like, at some level, like I gave it everything and more that I had to try to make it work there, and like sometimes it's just not a good fit, like and that's not anybody's fault. It's just I got to wind up somewhere that's a better fit for my work style and what people value from it and all that. So yeah, I'm happy with this decision for sure. I'm like feeling really a profound sense of relief over it actually. So yeah, it's nice.
Scary, but it's nice.
It's scary. It for sure is scary. Yeah, but
I had the same thing happen to me. I didn't even make it 90 days.
Yeah.
And we called it like, I'm not, and it was like, at first it was so personal. It was so like, I failed. Like I couldn't make this work. And then I realized like, I'm just not the right fit. They just need somebody different. It's nothing to do with me. And my vision doesn't align with them. Right. And so I'm going to hate my life trying to change who I am to fit their vision. Like that's not, I don't care how much money you pay me. That doesn't work.
Yeah.
Right?
It's so true.
It doesn't work. You cannot pay me enough to hate my life. Right.
Yeah. I was like getting that feeling every morning where I was like, I hate dreading logging on. And that's the feeling I was getting, right?
Yes.
It's like I was like waking up with like a weight on my chest, and I was like, now I don't have that anymore. Like I feel it's gone. So it's totally the right decision. So it's yeah, I totally agree with you. It really, really sucks when you go through that.
Yeah, I mean those feelings, that weight, I don't care who you are, nobody deserves to have that. And you've got to be, it's scary. Like I have 2 kids. I have a house that I love. I don't want to lose any of this. I wake up sometimes and I have this, like I look around, I'm like, I did this? How did I do it? And then you get the feeling of like, I don't want to fuck it up.
Yeah.
Things are going well. I don't want to fuck it up. But like, I also don't want
Every day, by the way, every day.
I would say not every day, but not every other day. It's like 2 out of 3 days I do stop and I love my life and I love the things that I have and I love my family and I love what they're able to do. And like, so there was like, well, I've just got to stick it out for them. Right. And then you're like, but who am I to be around? What kind of person am I like to be around when I'm miserable?
Yeah.
And like, you really, and you know, what's funny is when you're brave and you're able to walk away, so many more doors actually open. It takes time.
Yeah.
It takes time.
Yeah.
And you've got to be willing to bend somewhat if you're willing, right? You've got to be okay with, hey, you know what? I might not get the title I had before. I might not get the salary I had before, but I'm going to be happier. And that's what we're looking for, right? I know.
Right. Yeah.
I'm ranting. Sorry.
No, it's all good stuff. And it's I'm right there with you.
Yeah. Excited to be another dude with a hat talking. Yeah, I was let go about like 8-9 months ago. And it was a very similar situation where it was like, and I feel like customer marketers, especially because for a lot of companies, it's a relatively new position or like a new like title within the organization that it feels like some companies are getting a little bit of buyer's remorse, whenever they come in and you say like, actually, these are the things that we need to do in order to do XYZ, in order to make like a thriving community, in order to, bring advocates together and stuff like that. And so it's really funny. Every time I talk to other customer marketers, these kind of conversations come up all the time in the industry. It might be because it was a quickly growing, title that a lot of folks, it might have been one of the first to cut because they grew so quickly. But yeah, no, it's been tough out here.
Yeah.
And
I think that's
Patrick, is your background in community? I can't remember.
It's mostly just in customer marketing. So
Okay.
community is a piece of that, but yeah, it was customer success over into marketing.
I just want you to know you have a very tranquil voice. I could listen to you talk.
Yeah, tell some stories.
It is a very smooth voice.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. I've practiced.
I've had it all my way. Well, thank you everyone for jumping on. We kind of launched right into talking to Jake about the position that he took a few months ago with piano when he left the company that was before that, Reprise or
Yeah,
something.
reprise.
Reprise.
Yeah.
And just talking about good customer marketing fits, both with the different sizes of companies, the different, there's different leadership and all of that. Um, but we honestly didn't have anything on the agenda for today. There's been some issues with Luma as far as people getting the invites and the reminder emails. And we've always had a little bit of an issue with the invites, but it's been a lot more lately. So I'm really spending a lot of time looking for the right tool to kind of move onto as far as events go. And last time in the community. So I didn't come up with a lot of topics to talk about this week. So we have basically open discussion for anyone that's new. And we usually go through maybe 3 to 5 topics a call where you just bring up something one you're working on, something, an insight of something that has happened recently in the industry or among our profession, and basically throw it in chat or bring it up and when there's a pause, which there are sometimes, and we'll all just talk about it. There's various people from all sorts of levels in here. And even with this small group right before July 4th, it's a little bit smaller than usual. But if anyone has a topic, um, Daniel just threw one in there. So let me read it. Yeah. Okay. Which key KPIs do you own in your org? That's a good question. Who wants to hop on that? You gonna make me call on someone? How about Krista Nyring?
I knew you were going to do that. I mean, I'm still building, so I get to define my KPIs. Right now, it's about output, right? How many customer stories, how many case studies are we doing? How many videos are we doing? How many, right? Moving forward, that will change. We are launching a community probably at the beginning of next year. But that will be a whole new set of KPIs, right? So we're still figuring that out, is the short answer to that. Yeah.
Yeah, that helps though. That kind of gives the idea of what it looks like when you're first starting to build out these programs. I mean, and there are a lot of people in that space. So as some of you know, I asked a question in the community through direct message. I asked almost all of you and asked like who's interested in doing some kind of mentoring or being a mentor, being a mentee. Over 200 responded, and over 170 are interested on some level, which is crazy to me because I once ran it through my newsletter and I got 2 responses. So that was a huge difference. I spent most of last week just responding to everyone. But here's the fun part is that most of the people in the community, I'd say over half, want to do both, which I thought is really interesting. And the people that are most interested in being mentored or just mentored are people that are newer to the space and really looking for some of that information about those KPIs. What are you looking for? What are the numbers that you're going to start sharing with your executives or your leadership? So as much as you're like, I'm not really sure, it's super helpful to even start there.
Yeah. Yeah. I know where I'd like to be, just not quite there yet.
Where would you like to be?
Well, the biggest impact KPI, I think, is impact revenue, right? Can I prove that what I'm doing impacts revenue? So I think that'll be the biggest one. How many deals do we influence? What's the impact to revenue?
So can I interrupt? Is that okay?
Yeah.
Please.
Yeah, jump in.
Sorry, I'm first time in a meeting, and so not sure
No,
what.
very conversational. I should have said that. Jump in if you have something to say. Raise your hand if you feel more comfortable with it, either in your image, your video, or with the reaction. And I try to give everyone time to speak that wants to.
So I've been a CMO or VP in small startups for the last decade, and thinking about my next career move as a role in a bigger company, but also always pondering this question of customer marketing. And I've been talking to Base recently, which is a product, a startup in the space, and maybe joining them and thinking about, okay, how do we sell a product like this? And the first thing you need to do is impact a KPI. And I was astounded just talking to people, how come there's no KPI associated with this role? And so Christy said, they're looking for the KPI. Weren't you given one when you were hired? Like, what were you told? Like, you don't you you know, you have a management position.
Yes,
Weren't you
yes, I
told this is
do.
your role
So
in the company? You own.
yeah, I will absolutely tell you. This is a we are actually a large marketing department. There's 140 people in marketing here. We have not done any kind of customer marketing ever. Not officially, right? We've done customer marketing, but not there's never been a position for it. Nobody owns, customer content or gathering customer data or any of that. So this came out of I saw a gap. I pitched a position to my VP, and he said, yes, we absolutely need that. If you want to own it, go for it. And I did, and I'm creating everything. He didn't really have, he's relying on me to define what successful is for the company. I love that. I get to define my own, and then if I don't need it, then then I'm really in trouble. But yeah, so no, I wasn't hired from the outside to do this, right? I was already with the company. I saw a gap. I made a pitch, and the position was created. It is definitely something that we need. And thankfully, leadership understands the value of what I'm doing. And I've made a pretty significant impact so far. But as far as KPIs, I wasn't given any. It was, go ahead, see what you can do. Once we see the impact, then we'll start measuring it, and we'll determine, what the best indicators of success are. So
Yeah,
hopefully that answers your question.
it's a double-edged sword in terms of job stability. In one
Yeah.
hand, nobody can say you're failing your numbers. In the other hand, when they're cutting back on anybody who's not contributing to the bottom line, it's like, right,
Thankfully, we don't really do that. I mean, I think, I don't know. I can show value without having numbers right now. Like, is that going to always be true? No. But leadership sees the impact without having to measure it technically.
I'll just
and I can
challenge
get
you.
away with
I'll
that for
challenge
long.
you there. I'm going to challenge you there and say, if
Yeah,
you're not measuring it, somebody else is.
that is true. Well,
Right?
and that's what I'm saying. Like, they can see the
They have
impact
an
without having
opinion.
hard numbers.
They have
I
an
don't-
opinion. They have an opinion. It's
They
not,
do.
maybe they don't have a number, but they have an opinion of what your contribution is. And maybe that is nothing, or maybe it's some vague thing, but somebody
Yeah.
out there cares.
Oh, no, you're
I know.
absolutely right.
Yeah.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. Which is exactly kind of what I was saying when I say that they see the impact without having hard numbers. Yeah, but I mean, KPIs, obviously it's something I've got to define, but it wasn't something that was given to me.
I think that happens with quite a few of these newer customer marketing and advocacy type roles. I'd love to pick on Daniel just a little bit because he said he subscribes to the not being beholden to numbers. And I've seen many not many, but quite a few people who do this and do it very well and do it confidently, but never had that for myself. So please, Mr. Rogers, what do you got for us?
Well, I apologize if I cough in y'all's ear. I'm getting over a cold. So, Ari, I don't have a soothing voice. I go somewhere in between prepubescent boy and 80-year-old smoker this week. So I could go either way on this call.
Well, I just get the latter all the time. So,
but yes, so and this is because I have lots of scars of just being beholden to numbers. So I couch this in that I spent 6.5 years at my old job, really just trying to shoot for everything and everything, like anything and everything. I'm like, cool, we got a nomination in, let's tell this story. We got, X amount of people on stage, we're just gonna fill them with everything, right? And that's how I view, or I have a request, I'm going to make sure that I answer that request right away. I viewed my value as a customer marketer as always responding and always hitting the exact numbers that I promised to. Kind of being subscribing like my value in the same way that a salesperson subscribes their value. Like you have to get those deals, you have to get those numbers, you will push yourself to the limit in order to make that happen. Lo and behold, that is completely unhealthy. Not only is it unhealthy from a personal standpoint, it is unhealthy from a professional standpoint because you are letting the culture of always on and always beholden to numbers affect the quality of which you're doing things. This is, again, a sort of quality over quantity perspective. So as I've been here at Grafana Labs for now 2.5 years, I set our success is our team, and I have 3 people on our team, and I tell everybody, our success is defined as helping our internal customers get from point A to point B faster. And whatever person we talk to and whatever person we are serving at that particular moment, we let them define what is point A and what is point B. So if it is a salesperson, their job is to figure out how to close deals faster. Okay, cool. What do we need to do in order to help people close deals faster? Well, if it is in a specific area that we have a content gap in, well, that's telling a story in that area. If that is trying to allow for them to get their slides that they are, getting value out of a story, right? We could produce 10 case studies, but who the hell's going to read 10 case studies? But if we produce one case study that has 5 slides that can then be told to anybody at any given time, that helps them get from point A to point B faster. If it's an SDR, our job is to make it so that they have these little snippets that they can qualify things, that they know exactly how to tell a story. If it's our events team, it's being able to make sure that we know how to run calls for presentations or support people all around the world. None of those things are actually say we are going to produce X amount of things or always be on or reply to all of these things. It's all about helping people get from point A to point B. And most of the time, that journey leads to more revenue or lower costs or more efficiency. But I'm not sitting here beholden to telling my boss, like, yeah, we're going to produce 10 case studies this quarter. I would never say that because that's a recipe for disaster, but that's how I view success.
I think there's a middle ground to some of what you're saying there.
Yeah.
And I think some of those apply sometimes, some of them apply all the time, some of them don't apply depending on the org you're in. What I would say is you have to set certain benchmarks. What I'm hearing from you is, and I used to say this a lot actually, which is that isn't the goal of my program. This is the goal. Those are byproducts. If we get more sales, that's a byproduct of a great program, right? We get more sales, we get faster time. But I also know, especially in scaling companies with large numbers, like you have to have certain benchmarks, you have to have certain goals of what you're trying to achieve. So you're saying, we help you get from A to B faster. Well, how much faster? What are we shooting for here? What does good look like? Because it has to be replicable. You have to have a certain thing. I'm not talking about setting numbers on tactical things that are like how many case studies, how many reviews. Those are outputs. That's not what I'm talking about. The overall, what you're aiming for is we're going to help shorten the sales cycle by 10%. We're going to have deal velocity go by 10%. We're going to increase that deal velocity, right? Like those kind of numbers, when you're moving up, that's how you get in That's how you get onto the big table. It tends to be, and if you don't own those kind of numbers, then you're relegated to doing more programmatic design at a tactical level. So it's just, I think there is a middle ground of what numbers you're trying to beholden yourself to, and they can be aspirational, right? But you've got to set something that you're trying to benchmark so that you can repeat and know how to tweak and optimize to get to where you're at, right? Do we need more case studies? Do we need more reviews? Do we need those all can sway and move, but your North Star is set, right?
I would caution, and Ari, I don't think you're wrong by any means, but I also subscribe to the belief that we can decrease deal velocity, right? But what happens if someone else in the organization is increasing it? So it's very hard to, like, we know what, like, that's why I sort of try to make it like put ourselves in a little bit of a vacuum of, we know we produce something, we know we provided value, because when you look at it, right, we can pull Salesforce reports that say these certain deals close faster, but in theory they could have closed a lot quicker had something else not been pushing on there, or things of that nature. So it's just hard to, like, those types of things, like you're saying, they're aspirational, but it's hard to make sure that there aren't other external factors that are affecting.
So you bring up an incredible point. It's absolutely true, but it's an and, not an or scenario. So yes, that's true, but that's true for every metric in the business, period. That is not a disclaimer to remove the need to have your numbers set, right? And what you do have to be is smarter about it and understand what are the different variables that we're dealing with here. If all things were to stay the same, this is what we can expect. Now, we can be aware that these variables are happening. This is timing. We know this quarter over quarter is different, so we're going to expect different results, right? So yeah, that's true. You have to be smart. So you bring up a really good point, which is you have to be cognizant of the bigger things, right? And all of the variables that are involved.
I'm gonna jump in here too, because I think there is kind of some magic in the middle where I agree that we shouldn't be beholden to numbers, for sure. Like 100% agree with that. However, I think that the way Ari put it earlier, where you have that North Star to guide you, right, I think is the right approach. Because if you, even if you have all those variables, and we all do, right, and but if you're not tracking them and you're not keeping an eye on the same things over a long period of time, then you can't really see the trends. You can't really see, oh, this is happening and I didn't even realize it. Or, so don't be beholden to the numbers, but use the numbers, utilize the numbers to see what's happening that maybe you're not going to catch, or to see, okay, do we need to shift here, or do we need to slide here, or do we need to whatever? And I think that there is a happy medium in between. So KPIs are important in that, and they're important to me. They're not important to my boss. Like, my boss is like, you know what? We need impact. He cares about impact. I want high impact content. I want to impact the sales cycle. I want to impact revenue. I want to whatever. He doesn't care about the numbers. I care about the numbers, because I think that that gives me a good pulse on performance, for lack of a better term, right? But it's my way of kind of keeping an eye on, how are we doing? Are we doing better? Did this impact less? Did this impact more, right? And the longer I keep track of those KPIs, the more insight I get. So it's really a tool for me. It's not really I don't feel like I'm beholden to the numbers, obviously, because I don't have any right now, but but I think that there's a good middle ground in there.
How would you measure your impact, though, if you aren't using numbers?
Exactly.
Oh, okay.
Exactly.
I think there's an interesting theme here, which I think goes into the maturity of the customer marketing org and the maturity of the marketing org.
That's a good point.
I'm a single customer marketer right now, and I am arguably the first time hire. There was a customer marketer before who was focused on some other stuff. So like, I'm doing a lot of 0 to 1 right now. And so my KPIs include, turn this thing on. right? Get this engine going, like have a plan for this thing, right? Like that's a lot of like what I'm measuring myself against right now. Whereas, if you have, let's say in a year from now, maybe I have like an attribution model and I can actually measure things like the, bottom line impact on a published customer story. That's, that's like it's just a very different phase of where customer marketing is. So I think there's just just arguably like a maturity theme here. And I think I just add to that so many of us are in very green customer marketing roles because we are those first time hires, because customer marketing is nascent, because very few people have been doing this for more than, I don't know, 5 years. Like it's just such a nascent world that we live in. So I would actually challenge all of us to be more metrics driven. There's ways to do it. There's ways to measure impact. There's that 3-bullet summary that you can go show to your CEO, being like, hey, here's what I did. And I would argue all of us to push harder on that, knowing that 0 to 1 maturity of the org, all of that is a little bit, it's hard. I'm also just going to share quickly an article. I don't know if anyone saw this. This was in the Harvard Business Review in March, and it's just cautioning around the culture of busyness. And I think often too, we can all get so caught up in I'm doing all these things, and it's like, okay, well, great, but where's the impact, right? And what are you actually doing here? So I'm happy to share this with everyone. It's a good quick read.
Yeah, thank you.
Mindy, if I can just tag on that, I think there's the ability to measure the impact. There's also the question of being impact focused in the actions.
Mhm.
And so that ties into what you're saying, which is, okay, sales will always ask for more customer stories and more testimonials, and we need more case studies. We need more case studies. And 9 times, every single company I've worked for, it's like they want more case studies. I'm like, wait a second, we have a ton of them. Why do you need more? Why? Tell me why, right? Let me give you what you actually need that'll have impact rather than what you're asking for. And 9 times out of 10, they don't need another case study, right? It just seems to be it's the same way that the customers ask for a case study. Why did they need it? Because the customer asked for one, and they don't have exactly what the customer wanted. So they tell you have to make it for me, right? Because it's easy to ask. And so why did the customer ask for it? 9 times out of 10, the customer asked for a case study, not because they are interested in the case study or they want to read it. They're asking for it for a reason, because they want some kind of proof that we have serviced companies of similar to them, or because they just need something in their hands that's transferable, right? That's a PDF format or something. There's a reason why they're asking. There's a reason why a salesperson is asking. And it doesn't mean that we have to spend all this work. Sometimes we can do something very simple and quick, or sometimes we can reuse something. And then also prioritizing the same way. Okay, I could spend 3 days doing this, because it takes a ton of work, or right? Or I could do something else. Sorry, this is low impact, servicing this one fringe deal that's not worth a lot of money to us, versus I'm going to do something else here to run this other campaign or what have you. So
I think your biggest KPI is actually how happy is your sales team and how happy is the product that you have. It's less about the number of case studies, this, that, or the other thing. It's really, at the company that I work for, sales is king. And so, for when it comes to client advocacy, it's how happy is sales with what we're producing. It's not necessarily the quantity or the number. It's is sales complaining that oh, they're losing deals because they don't have X, Y, or Z? And is that something that marketing can control? I would say from a client marketing perspective for KPIs, that's all, that's upsell and cross sell. It's how much revenue are you bringing in? Opportunities are you generating? So I think client marketing is a lot easier to have KPIs against, versus advocacy, which is just more of a gut type of thing. And again, the biggest KPI is sales complaining, or are they happy?
What company?
Sales will always complain.
Sorry.
Sales will always complain.
Correct, but it's more, do you get a consistent
consistent complaint?
A consistent complaint. For us, there was, a survey went out to sales, and if there was one specific topic that was coming up, then that was deemed okay, well, that's the issue. Sales will always complain, but it's more is every single person complaining about the same thing, or is it just like, okay, everybody has different things? Does that make sense?
Dov, is it? Dov Solomon? Is that who's talking?
Oh, it's actually Jill Solomon. I have no idea. I guess it's pulling my husband's name is Dove, so I don't know if maybe it's pulling his name.
Okay, okay. That makes sense. No, thank you for being on the call. I was wondering, like, who is this?
Who is Dove Solomon? The answer is my husband. Who is actually on the call is Jill Solomon.
Well, thank you for hopping on today. There's so many new people today.
Awesome.
So I have to say that I'm really interested in this idea of not being beholden to numbers, because I think that what it's done to, like, being able to have the internet with all these numbers that are tied to everything, it's made it very difficult sometimes to show an impact. And like Ari was saying, that, while you can argue with every number and all of that, yes, but we've all become so numbers driven that I think it's become a little dangerous. And so when I hear of people who, I think Christine Garnett at HubSpot is not super focused on the numbers that she delivers for what she was doing and in her last position before her promotion. I don't know right now, but like community leading back to revenue. And I loved that because there's so many companies that are so focused on that leading back to revenue that it they end up killing their communities, which supports the company in various ways. And I know Daniel Grafana has a community as well. So I think it's really interesting to, one, hear about their approach, but also hear about the confidence and the way that they present this to their executive and management teams. So I'm wondering about that, Daniel, if you can share a little on that.
Yeah, I mean the community side, and I'll preface this by saying we're an open source software company. So our definition of community is a whole lot different than many others. Mostly because that means it's basically 90 to 95% of the people who use our software that will never ever pay us. And so there's that side of things. So we do have there are KPIs that come along with that. There are numbers like, yeah, we want to have meetup groups in all of these areas, but that's mostly so we can we can grow the community in hopes that a percentage of those people will eventually work their way through our funnel. But they're not necessarily tied to this community group in Aspen, Colorado, I'm just picking a random city, will eventually lead to X amount of money. The idea is if our pie is 100 people large, 5% of 100 is smaller than 5% of 200. So is meeting them where they are, and eventually, yes, revenue will happen, but it's much more about the people, much more about the idea that we are cultivating them as opposed to working, as opposed to being beholden to money. And I think that's the difference that I or that I always talk about. It's the intention rather than the end dollar amount, right? What is your intention? What is your what is the end goal? And again, I go back to how I said it before, getting from point A to point B. If you help run meetups in an area, you have made it quicker for those community members to continue to double down on being community members, right? Eventually, if we do things right, those community members will become stronger users who will then, in theory, end up paying us at some point, and then we've naturally made it through the cycle. But we listen to signals, we look at numbers in order to point us in the right direction, but we also have to go with the human side of things.
Yeah, I think that is very helpful, and it does kind of go back to what Mindy was saying about the like where an organization is and where we are in the like how long this has been part of the organization, how long has community or customer marketing been a part of this, and like already kind of proven that there is a decent impact. And I think, if I'm not completely incorrect, please correct me. I know HubSpot has seen that. They, I have experience with them because of community specifically, but I think Grafana is there as well.
Yeah, I would definitely say that as well. But going back real quick, I will, to Mindy's point, say that when we were in the 0 to 1 phase, our goals were much more, let's get some, like, let's boost our content, let's boost our logos, because again, we were trying to show value to the people, so that when we shifted that focus and we said, hey, it's no longer about numbers, it's about the quality that we're doing it, we had something to fall back on. The quicker the quicker you can make that delta to where you're changing, the happier you'll be. But I didn't want to come off and be like, well, we look at your site, Daniel, you have 100 things on there. At what point did you switch from being numbers based? We switched after I think 9 months of being here.
Gotcha.
But that's sort of where we are now. So totally agree on that point, Mindy. Didn't want to be kind of a hypocrite in talking here.
No, and that
Daniel,
helps Krista too, because she was just saying
yeah,
that's where she is right now.
yeah, exactly. Well, and my next question is, Daniel, are you in charge of community specifically? Are you in charge of like all advocacy and customer marketing? And are you do you apply that to everything? Because I can tell you, there are no KPIs, and I'm not developing KPIs around the community. Like, there's no expectation there, but there are KPIs around, references and like the outputs, right? The case studies and the videos and the content. So it's interesting because in a community, I wouldn't expect there to be, there might be cursory ones like what's the engagement and how many people and all of that, but nothing really tied to revenue.
Yeah, I would
Oh, sorry, go ahead.
I was just gonna say, I would push for that measurement. Like I would, and there's probably much stronger community experts here than me, but when you think about if they're engaged in an initiative and you see you test the hypothesis of something to the tune of, those who are engaged in community, we see, faster close on renewal. Those who are engaged in community, we see higher rate of renewal. We see, stronger, I don't know, upsell opportunities. Like, I think you can actually tie it back to dollars. And so it doesn't need to necessarily be like, it's this nice thing we're doing. Like, I think you can actually push and kind of like dig into some analysis around not just engagement, but like how that is impacting retention, upsell, all that stuff.
I will say I was in a conversation recently where I was showing like, hey, look, we just ran this big user summit. Also check it out. Or we ran it like a year back and was like, hey, check it out. The people who attended this user summit were more likely to renew afterwards. And the response I got back was like, no, duh, the people who went to the user summit were going to renew anyways. Stuff like that. Like, that was the big thing that I got. It was like, you're like messing up causation and all that kind of fun stuff. And so I kind of came back with was like, well, we decided that like community was important to us. Like, we saw that community was like a way that we can drive revenue, and attribution sucks. Like, I've never met any organization that's able to like actually get attribution done perfectly well, right? Because we're all complicated beings, just because it was the last touch doesn't mean it was the most important touch, right? And so like we were able to say, I feel like in customer marketing, everything is just, all of our KPIs are just so programmatic. Like, we're going to host a user summit. What good looks like there is X number of people. Can I hit that number? Or we're going to do a community. What good engagement looks like is this number, stuff like that. So we're going to go towards that number. I feel like in customer marketing, because it's relatively new, all the good KPIs are kind of already taken, like anything that's related to revenue is like, if I go to the sales team and I'm like, hey, look at all the work I did and I sped your sales cycle up by a month, they're like, excuse me, and you are like, I did that. You know what I mean? So I do kind of feel like I've found the most success in saying like, here are my programmatic things, or here are my programs, here are the KPIs we set together. We came up with that KPI together to say this is successful to lead to XYZ. And like, that's been the most, helpful for me.
One thing I've done in the past around that is I've calculated the value per an average, the value of a community member. So Daniel was talking about community of users versus community of customers. And what you can do is you can say, hey, on average, we see that every community member we acquire and we invest in is worth X, right? And so then you can say, well, if that's the case, this is the budget I need, or these are the activities that are worth doing. Maybe user conference is too expensive. It doesn't make sense, an in-person conference, or maybe it's not. Maybe it's totally worth it, right? And so being able to, you can look at it from one end and say, okay, how many opportunities did they generate for sales this quarter? Or you could say, on average, X community members worth so and so. Just the same way that lead gen people say every, they know, okay, what's the cost per lead, cost per click, cost per opportunity. They do that math. You can also do cost per or value per community member. And that's a great way of looking at it in aggregate, because it gives, if you sit on $50 million worth of community members, right? It's just a question of now, the question of how do we calculate it, right? How do, and also how it's not a question of this quarter. It's a question of the value is there, but maybe they're not buying today, right? At some point, somebody in sales is going to reach out to them. At some point, they're going to reach out to sales. Maybe that's in 5 years from now. But the value is there in this community. We own them rather than the competitors owning them. And so that's kind of an interesting approach to doing it, I think.
Yeah. And, since we are talking so much about revenue and tracking and metrics and all of those things that hit on the customer marketer and advocacy and even community, I have to say, Leslie has a really good course. I really enjoyed it, and there's not a lot of fluff. So if you are looking for more information about that, totally sounds pitchy right now, but it's very on topic.
We
So
did not plan this.
no, we did not.
Thanks, Mary. Thank you. Yeah, I'll put it in the chat.
Does anyone else have another topic that they'd like to bring up to the group, or question they want to ask, something they worked on that has gone really well, anything like that?
So I have a question just in regard, and it's pretty specific. In terms of people who gather client quotes, what is the best way that you're getting them out to sales? Like in what format?
Daniel says slide deck in the chat.
It's
I
funny you
think
mentioned that, Jill, because I'm literally in the process of making it easier for them to find it. We have a slide deck that has 132, 33 quotes in there that they're segregated out by product. But we realized that you can't really command F in a slide deck. So I'm in the process of putting them all into our reference edge tool, actually, that allows people to search by all of the different attributes and then boil down to all of the different products. And you take the link, you click the link and it takes you right to the slides.
Makes sense. Yeah. I mean, because I have an Excel doc, but I know, and it's living in Seismic, and I just know that it's not really getting used. I've also Trust Radius is always pitching the widget for sales, but I have a lot of salespeople, and I feel like it may just be too much. So I'm just trying to come up with what the best way is.
Jennifer Lyons just asked, does anyone have a tool like Strike Deck? Is that similar to what we're talking about, Jennifer?
Yeah, but I just have it. I don't know if you can use it real easily for, quotes on, but yeah, indexing is key. I mean, you have your asset needs your testimonial, whatever it is. If it's not indexed properly in a tool that's at the salesperson's fingertips, I just was familiar with Strike Deck. I haven't had the opportunity to use anything else before.
Okay. Yeah, I haven't heard of it, but I'll definitely check it out. I love, getting all these different tools and stuff. I have talked to two companies in our space. One is going to be offering, well, they're both going to be offering a free tool. One to kind of try to help customer marketers get off from spreadsheets, and another to kind of have like a place to put all of this information for at least you to find. Not sure if it's going to be something that the whole organization can use, especially on the free side, but I know that there are definitely going to be things coming out over the next couple of months that might be helpful. So definitely keep your eye out. And this is, I haven't learned what Champion is yet too much. So, but I'm excited because the idea of not having to be in a spreadsheet, which is, I love spreadsheets, they work, but to have a tool that can help a little bit more would be really nice to have that. And, I think putting it somewhere for sales is a great idea. I can't imagine using the slide deck or like trying to decide between, what slide deck do I need to go into? Is it about this topic? Is it about that topic? It's kind of difficult. And I know Val Geisler talked about this a bit back, probably June of last year. I can find the episode and maybe share that. And Leslie has something to share.
No, I just wanted to ask a question regarding customer logos. Fun topic. Do you guys have a systemized way, or like for me, we have to, oh my God, Friday brain. Sorry. We are having the AEs fill out whether or not they have logo permission before they can close out the opportunity. Are you guys doing the same thing? And then have you had people come up to you and are just like, oh, do we have logo permission for this list of customers? And it's like, well, do you have access to Salesforce? Like I do? Well, then go check the contract. So I'm just wondering if like that is, if you're being asked about logos, and if you have a system, an easy way to track all that stuff.
So
I don't know if I'm good at it, but I'm happy to tell you what I've done that's worked. So I've created custom fields in Salesforce that are owned by customer marketing, view access for everyone else.
Yeah.
I've partnered with my RevOps team, like the Salesforce admins folks, to create the field, but then also to help automate that field. So
yeah,
get an MSA agreement that says you can use my logo, it automatically checks that box rather than me reviewing the MSA and going and checking that box.
My problem is with that is, what if it's prior approval needed? It's not a black or white yes or no. It's like prior approval, and automation can't handle that.
So, sure. I've done pull down tabs too of like, yes, with permission, and no, or unknown,
Yeah.
so like, I don't know back end of Salesforce stuff super well, but like I don't know, I'm a pretty good user for years. So I don't know how they built that out, but they were able to help me build out that. And then what I do is I create like the other custom, and I love nerding out about tech stack, so I'm totally happy to like talk more about this, but I created other custom like advocacy fields in Salesforce. And then I've created an advocacy dash, like something for sales and something for CS, and they kind of all look the same, but creating dashes, you can just go and see like, here are the 100 logos you can use, right? And you can click through to that report to see that those logos.
Yeah,
That's how I've set it up. But like I said, like I don't know if I'm necessarily good at it. I think this is like the gajillion-dollar customer marketing question.
Yeah, Mindy,
Yeah.
I love that. I used Airbase before to keep all of our like quotes and logos in the same spot, because I found that when they were putting stuff together, they were like, they do the same at the same time, right? Like they pull the quotes at the same time they're looking at the right logos to use. And so with Airbase, they were able to sort by like, what is the product that's in play? What are the use cases that are in play? Like, what are things that it mentions? Things like that. So they were able to pull in one tab, like the specific quotes that matches the product and use case. And also like to find the logos that match those specific products and use cases. It did take a little bit of like manual effort to put those logos into Airbase, but that was like the go-to source for everybody.
Patrick,
that lived in Seismic as well.
Patrick, what is Airbase? Is it Airtable?
Shit, Airtable. Yeah.
Okay.
I'm using another platform, Airbase, that does. Man, SaaS software names, it's rough. I work at a company named Swoogo. I love Swoogo. It's an awesome company. And it's a really cool product, but the name really gets me. Like, what is a Swoogo? But yeah, so it's Airtable.
Okay. Yeah, so that Valeria from Airtable has gotten on a few calls with us before, and she actually showed how she uses Airtable for all sorts of things, customer marketing, like importing Salesforce information, the asset part, the bringing references together. It was an amazing call. A little difficult for me to replicate because I just haven't had the time to play with it, but I love to see all of the ways that we can use tools like that.
Yeah, I mean, Airtable was great. I think, like, because we even have it. Our issue is that we don't have licenses for our sales folks. So it's great for us, but like we have 6,000 salespeople. So,
ooh, yeah, that is expensive. So you either have to, you'd have to
which
make
is
it
why
public, and that's
we're doing
useless.
right. Which is why like we're doing Excel and posting it into Seismic, because at least everybody has a Seismic license. But like, I don't know how much it's getting used, and like I don't know.
Same. Yeah, I have the exact same situation where I'm like, and we have 7 different business units, so the 6,000 sales folks are broken up into 7 different business units, and yeah, it's craziness. Our technology is all over the place. Getting
Yeah, I
anybody
feel like
on
that
this,
myself.
yeah,
Well,
getting anybody on the same platform is challenging.
yeah. Well, guess what?
gotta
It's
drop.
the end of the call. And it's been fun.
Bye.
If you get the email to leave feedback, please do so and leave a little comment, because I'm trying to use those to get sponsors. And we have guests for the next 2 weeks. So hop on to see. Next week we have, I'm not sure. So somebody will be here next week and the following week, and you'll just have to pay attention to emails in the community to find out who. Thank you all for coming, and have a great 4th of July weekend.
You too. Thanks.
Bye.
Bye.